Children belong in back. Move to coach.
You just bullied my daughter. On my plane.
Children belong in the back. Move to coach. Vanessa Whitfield stood in the aisle of my charter flight, demanding my 14-year-old daughter surrender her premium seat because teenagers don't need that kind of space. You just bullied my daughter. On my plane. When the HOA president ordered Emma to give up her seat on a flight my airline provided, my daughter complied because adults taught her to respect authority. When that woman discovered I owned Atlas Regional Airlines, the company she'd just humiliated my child on, she started a campaign to destroy my business through HOA violations. When she issued citations targeting my company, she made one critical mistake. She forgot that aviation executives understand liability insurance better than HOA presidents do. The board chair made 3 mistakes that day. She humiliated the wrong teenager. She targeted the wrong father's airline business. And she assumed HOA authority could touch a federally regulated aviation company without consequences. My name is Robert Castellano. I'm CEO of Atlas Regional Airlines. And the woman who told my daughter she didn't belong in a premium seat just created insurance liability that's about to cost every homeowner in our community thousands, or remove her from power completely. If you've ever watched someone bully a child and wished you had the power to make them face real consequences, so hit the subscribe button now. Let me tell you why this matters more than seat assignments or neighborhood politics. Emma is 14, talented French horn player, anxiety struggles after being bullied at her previous school. We'd finally rebuilt her confidence, taught her she deserved the opportunities she earned, that taking up space wasn't something to apologize for. That charter flight was returning from a school band trip. I'd provided it at cost because the music program couldn't afford commercial tickets. Emma's premium seat wasn't a luxury. It was an assignment my staff made for a passenger on my aircraft. Vanessa Whitfield treated my daughter like she was unworthy, made her move to a cramped middle seat and back while Vanessa enjoyed the premium placement. Loud enough for other passengers to hear, entitled children these days, and parents who don't teach their kids their place. Emma came off that plane crying, not about the seat, about an adult telling her she didn't belong in nice spaces, that she should know her place, that she'd done something wrong by existing visibly. My wife, Sarah, she's a child psychologist, recognized the damage immediately. Emma was regressing, questioning whether she deserved her elite music program acceptance, whether she took up too much space, whether adults would always see her as not good enough. We'd spent 2 years rebuilding her confidence after bullying destroyed it once. One entitled woman undid months of healing in 2 hours. But here's what the HOA president didn't know when she looked up my airline and decided to weaponize HOA authority against my family. I built Atlas Regional specifically to serve underserved communities, to provide dignity and access to families who couldn't afford premium air travel otherwise. That premium seat Emma occupied, it represented everything I'd built my company around. The belief that everyone deserves quality treatment regardless of their background. Vanessa saw a teenager in a seat she wanted, saw an opportunity to exercise authority over someone smaller and younger. She didn't see the CEO who understood exactly how insurance companies evaluate liability, who knew that HOA presidents acting on personal vendettas create exposure that terrifies insurers, who had the resources and expertise to make her abuse of authority more expensive than any board could tolerate. The next morning, I received my first HOA violation. The board chair thought she was punishing an overreaching resident. She'd just declared war on someone who understood leverage better than she ever would. Where are you watching from? Because what started with a seat on a charter flight ended with an insurance company forcing an entire community to choose between their HOA president and their financial security. Vanessa told my daughter she didn't belong. I was about to teach her what happens when you target the wrong family's child. The HOA violation arrived by certified mail the next morning. Unauthorized commercial vehicle parked in residential driveway. Company logo visible from street constitutes commercial signage in violation of community standards. The vehicle in question was my company SUV with a small Atlas Regional Airlines logo. It had been parked in my driveway for 3 years without a single complaint. I called the HOA office immediately. The secretary, nervous, apologetic, transferred me to Vanessa Whitfield. Mr. Castellano, I looked you up after returning from my trip yesterday. Her voice was ice. I had no idea you were running a commercial airline operation from our residential community. the realization hit me like cold water. The woman who'd bullied Emma was our HOA president, lived in Lakeside Manor Estates, had access to every tool she needed to make our lives miserable. "I'm not running anything from the community," I said carefully. "I have a home office like dozens of other residents. The SUV is a company vehicle I drive to work. After researching your business, I've discovered you're using HOA property and community connections for commercial purposes." She didn't even pretend to care about my explanation. "That violates multiple covenants. I've already filed complaints with the county regarding illegal commercial use of residential property." "This is about the flight, isn't it? About Emma?" Silence. Then, "This is about ensuring community standards, Mr. Castellano. Perhaps your family will learn that respect for authority matters, especially when that authority controls where you live." She hung up. I stood in my home office, violation notice trembling in my hand, and felt something cold settle in my chest. The board chair wasn't enforcing legitimate rules. She was weaponizing HOA power for revenge because my daughter had occupied a seat she wanted. Sarah found me 20 minutes later, staring at the violation. "Rob, what's wrong?" "The woman from the flight, the one who made Emma move." I showed her the notice. "She's our HOA president, and she just filed complaints with the county claiming I'm running illegal commercial operations from our house." Sarah's face went pale. "She's retaliating because Emma was on your plane?" She explicitly connected it, said our family needs to learn respect for authority. I pulled up Lakeside Manor's HOA website, found Vanessa's photo and bio. She's been president for 3 years, former corporate event planner, controls the board completely. Can she actually claim your home office violates zoning? Probably not successfully, but she can make the process expensive, stressful, and public. I thought about Emma's face when she'd come off that plane, humiliated, questioning her worth. She's going to use every bit of HOA authority to punish us for that flight. Because you own the airline she bullied your daughter on. Because I represent something she resents, success from working-class background, a teenager in a premium seat, people who don't automatically defer to her authority. I looked at the violation again. This isn't about parking violations or home offices. It's about putting us in our place. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" I thought about Emma crying in the car yesterday, about Vanessa's voice on the phone, smug, certain of her power, about the implicit threat in her words. "I control where you live. I'm going to research every move she's made as HOA president, every violation she's issued, every family she's targeted." I opened my laptop, because people who abuse authority usually have patterns, and patterns create vulnerabilities. "Rob, she came after our daughter, Sarah, made Emma question whether she deserves the space she occupies. Now she's threatening our home, my business, our family's stability." I met my wife's eyes. I built an airline from nothing. I understand leverage, liability, and how to find pressure points in systems. Vanessa Whitfield just weaponized HOA authority against someone who knows exactly how to make that authority cost her everything. The violation notice sat between us. The opening move in a war the board chair didn't realize she'd started. She thought she was punishing a resident who disrespected her. She'd just targeted a CEO who understood that HOA presidents acting on personal vendettas create the kind of liability that insurance companies fear most. And I was about to teach her the difference. Kathy Morrison appeared at my door that evening, looking like she hadn't slept since the violation arrived. "Mr. Castellano, I need to talk to you. About Vanessa. About what she's planning." I recognized her. HOA secretary, lived 3 doors down. Single mother who ran a catering business from home. I'd seen her at board meetings, always sitting beside the HOA president, always voting with her. I stepped aside, let her in. She stood in my living room, wouldn't sit, kept checking the windows like she expected someone to be watching. Her hands shook as she pulled them from her coat pockets, then shoved them back in. She checked her phone twice in 30 seconds. "I have 2 kids," she said finally. "Teenager and a 10-year-old. I run a catering business. All my clients come from referrals in this community. Vanessa's connections to wealthy residents. Without those referrals, you can't afford to cross her. She called an emergency board meeting yesterday morning. Just the 3 board members she controls." Kathy's voice cracked. right after she got back from that flight. She told us what happened on the plane, but her version. Said your daughter was disrespectful and entitled, that Emma refused to move when asked politely. That's a lie. I know. She finally met my eyes, because Vanessa also said that man's daughter needs to learn respect. Now I'm going to teach her father a lesson about community standards. The words hit like physical blows. She explicitly said she was targeting my family because of the flight? Kathy nodded, pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. She texted me this morning. She showed me the screen. Board meeting next week. We'll be discussing commercial activity restrictions. Anyone who doesn't support enforcement will find their own homes under increased scrutiny. She's threatening you. She's threatened everyone. Kathy's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. Mr. Castellano, this isn't the first time. 2 years ago, a nurse who worked night shifts. Vanessa cited her for excessive vehicle traffic when colleagues carpooled from her house, issued violations until the family sold and left. Last year, a teacher who tutored students at home. Vanessa accused her of running unauthorized educational business. That family left too. She forces out people she doesn't like. She forces out people she thinks don't belong here. Kathy wiped her eyes. Successful professionals, working-class backgrounds, anyone who doesn't automatically defer to her authority. She told me once she can't stand new money families who think they belong in premium spaces. The words echoed what had happened on the plane. Vanessa seeing Emma in that premium seat, deciding a teenager from our background didn't belong there. Why are you telling me this? Because my daughter asked me last night why I wasn't helping Emma's family when that HOA lady is being mean to them. Kathy's voice broke completely. And I couldn't answer without admitting I've been complicit through silence. That I've watched Vanessa destroy 3 families and said nothing because I was afraid. What's she planning next? A board vote next week on commercial activity restrictions, written specifically to target everything about your business, your vehicle, your home office, even mentioning your company in community spaces. She handed me her phone. These are screenshots of the proposed rules. She's going to make it impossible for you to live here while running your airline. I read through the restrictions. They were absurdly specific, clearly crafted to target me while affecting no one else. Kathy, will you testify to what you heard about Vanessa connecting this to the flight incident? She looked at the floor, shoulders hunched. If my business survives without her referrals, if there's protection from retaliation, then yes. I'll testify to everything. The targeting, the threats, the families she's forced out. All of it. I'll make sure you're protected. After she left, I reviewed the screenshots she'd shared, the proposed restrictions, the timeline of Vanessa's campaign. The board chair thought she'd found the perfect weapon, HOA authority with no accountability. She didn't know I was already mapping every vulnerability in her position, and she definitely didn't know that insurance companies have very specific opinions about HOA presidents who use their authority for personal vendettas, especially when those vendettas target federally regulated businesses. Vanessa had bullied my daughter. Now she was about to learn what happens when you weaponize authority against someone who understands liability better than you do. The violations arrived like clockwork over the next week. Monday. Commercial signage visible from property. The Atlas logo on my SUV that had been there for 3 years. Tuesday. Unauthorized business meetings on residential property. I'd taken a work call from my home office visible through a window. Wednesday. Solicitation of HOA residents for commercial gain. Emma had mentioned my airline to a friend at the community pool 2 months ago. Thursday. Violation of noise ordinances. A delivery truck had brought office supplies to my house. Friday. Improper use of residential address for business correspondence. Atlas Airlines listed my home address as the CEO's contact. Total fines, $4,500. Each violation notice included the same threatening language. Failure to remedy within 10 days will result in daily fines of $100 per violation and potential legal action, including property liens. But the financial penalties weren't the worst part. Vanessa had been busy spreading rumors. Sarah heard it first at the grocery store, another parent from Emma's school, suddenly cold and distant. I heard your husband is under HOA investigation for running illegal business operations. That's concerning. Then Emma came home from the community pool in tears. What happened? Madison's mom said I can't come to her pool party next week. Emma's voice was small, broken. She said her daughter shouldn't associate with families under HOA investigation, that were causing problems in the community. I felt rage rising in my chest. Madison's been your friend for 2 years. Her mom is friends with the HOA president. Emma wiped her eyes. She said Vanessa told her our family is using the neighborhood for business, that we're violating rules, that we don't respect community standards. Sarah found me in the kitchen an hour later, staring at the pile of violation notices. Our neighbor, the Hendersons, they stopped waving this morning. Her voice was tight. Just looked away when I walked past. Vanessa's poisoning the entire community against us. She's systematic about it. I pulled up my research on my laptop. I've been digging into her history as HOA president. The nurse who left. Vanessa spread rumors she was running an unlicensed medical practice from home. The teacher, accused of inappropriate contact with students during tutoring. Neither was true, but the damage was done. Families isolated, reputations destroyed, until they couldn't take it anymore, and sold. She's doing the same thing to us. Worse. Because I own an airline, she can claim federal regulatory concerns. Make it sound like I'm operating illegally. She filed complaints with the county. I got notice today that zoning enforcement is investigating whether my home office violates commercial use restrictions. Sarah sat down heavily. Can they actually force us out? Through violations and fines? Eventually, yes. Through social isolation and reputation damage? Faster. I thought about Emma's face. That same humiliated expression she'd worn coming off the plane. The board chair is teaching our daughter that speaking up gets you punished. That success makes you a target. That authority figures will destroy you for not knowing your place. What are we going to do? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Castellano, this is county zoning enforcement. We received a complaint regarding commercial airline operations at your residence. We need to schedule an inspection. I took the call, arranged the inspection, hung up feeling the noose tightening. Vanessa had weaponized the HOA, the neighbors, and now county officials. She was building a cage of violations, investigations, and social isolation designed to force us out of our home. Emma appeared in the doorway, still tear-streaked from the pool party exclusion. Dad, are we going to have to move? Because of me taking that seat on the plane? That question, my 14-year-old daughter blaming herself for an adult's vindictive campaign, broke something in me. No, sweetheart, we're not moving. And this isn't because of you taking a seat you were assigned. I pulled her close. This is because someone doesn't like being told no. Because the HOA president thinks she can punish families for not deferring to her authority. But everyone's mad at us now. Everyone's scared of her. There's a difference. I looked at Sarah over Emma's head, and I'm about to show them exactly why that fear is misplaced. The board chair thought she'd cornered us. She didn't know I'd already started mapping the liability exposure she'd created. And she definitely didn't know that her campaign against my family had just triggered the kind of insurance review that ends HOA presidents' careers. I walked into Daniel Park's law office the next morning, carrying every violation notice, every threatening email, every piece of documentation I'd compiled. Daniel specialized in aviation law and business regulation. We'd worked together for 12 years. He'd helped me navigate FAA certification, charter licensing, every regulatory hurdle Atlas Airlines had faced. He reviewed the violations in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. Rob, she's made several critical errors here. He pulled up the cease and desist letter Vanessa's attorney had sent. First, aviation is federally regulated. Her HOA has zero jurisdiction over your airline operations. Zero. She can't prohibit you from owning an airline any more than she can prohibit you from being a doctor or lawyer. She's claiming I'm running commercial operations from residential property. You have a home office, like millions of Americans. Daniel highlighted sections of the letter. Second, she's attempting to interfere with interstate commerce. Charter flights cross state lines. That's federal territory. Third, she's demanding you not mention your profession or company, which could violate FAA disclosure requirements for Part 135 charter operators. He pulled up more documents. Fourth, And this is the big one. Her claim that providing at-cost charter flights to schools constitutes commercial solicitation is legally baseless and potentially defamatory to your business reputation. She's using HOA authority as a weapon. She's using HOA authority for personal retaliation stemming from a non-HOA incident. Daniel's voice was sharp. That's harassment with business interference, and it creates massive liability exposure. For who? For the HOA, for individual board members, for every homeowner whose insurance premiums just became a ticking time bomb. He pulled up Lakeside Manor's insurance policy, public record in HOA documents. Your HOA has a $2 million liability cap, but look at these exclusions. He highlighted 3 sections: intentional acts, harassment, actions taken for personal benefit rather than HOA interest. If Vanessa's actions are deemed personal retaliation rather than legitimate HOA enforcement, the insurance company could deny coverage entirely. That exposes individual homeowners to personal liability for any damages you might seek. The implications hit me immediately. How much exposure are we talking about? Business defamation, harassment, interference with federally regulated operations. You could seek millions in damages. But more importantly, Daniel pulled up case law. Insurance companies hate HOA presidents who act on personal vendettas. The moment they realize Vanessa's campaign started because of a seat on your plane, they'll view her as an uninsurable liability. What happens then? They drop coverage, raise premiums 400%, or demand her removal as a condition of continued coverage. Daniel looked at me directly. You don't need to sue, Rob. You just need the insurance company to realize Vanessa's personal vendetta is costing them money. They'll force the HOA to choose between her and their coverage. I thought about Emma's question last night. Are we moving because of me? About Vanessa's voice on the phone. Your family will learn respect for authority. About the systematic campaign to destroy us financially and socially. How do we trigger an insurance review? Formal notice to the carrier documenting the harassment, the personal vendetta, the business interference. We include Kathy's testimony about Vanessa explicitly connecting violations to the flight incident. We note the federal regulatory issues. We calculate potential damages that would exceed policy limits. Daniel started drafting. The insurance company has a duty to investigate. When they discover Vanessa's actions were motivated by personal retaliation for something that happened on your aircraft, not legitimate HOA enforcement, they'll panic because it falls outside coverage. Because it exposes them to millions in liability with no policy protection and a clear pattern of intentional misconduct. He looked up. Insurance companies protect themselves first. When they realize the HOA president is operating a personal vendetta that could bankrupt them, they'll eliminate the liability. By eliminating Vanessa, by making the HOA choose, remove her, or lose coverage and face premium increases that make the community uninsurable. I watched Daniel compile the documentation. Every violation traced back to the flight, every threatening statement, every piece of evidence showing this was personal retaliation disguised as HOA enforcement. The board chair thought she'd weaponized authority against a powerless resident. She'd weaponized it against someone who understood exactly how insurance liability works in federally regulated industries. And she just created the kind of exposure that insurance companies fear most. An HOA president using her position for personal revenge against a business owner who could seek damages that would exceed coverage and trigger federal regulatory involvement. Vanessa had spent a week tightening a noose around my family. She didn't realize she'd just handed me the rope to hang her career with. Send the notice, I said. Let's see what happens when the insurance company realizes their HOA president is too expensive to keep. I found Emma at the community dock 3 days later, sitting alone in the spot where we'd always had our father-daughter talks. She was crying. Not the dramatic tears of a teenager denied something she wanted. The quiet, broken crying of someone who's internalized a message that's destroying her from the inside. Emma? She looked up, wiped her eyes quickly. Sorry, Dad. I know I'm not supposed to be out here. The HOA president might say we're using community property for business or something. The words, my 14-year-old apologizing for existing in her own neighborhood, made my chest ache. I sat beside her on the dock. What happened? Nothing happened. That's the problem. She stared at the water. I've been thinking about that seat on the plane, about how I should have just said no when she told me to move, how I should have been brave enough to stand up for myself. Emma, You did nothing wrong. But I did. I took that premium seat when I should have known it wasn't for me. I should have sat in the back where I belonged. Her voice cracked. And now our whole family is in trouble because I thought I deserved to be there. I felt something break inside me. Look at me. I waited until she met my eyes. That seat was assigned to you, on my aircraft. You belonged there because you were a passenger on that flight, and that's where my staff seated you. But the HOA president said, the HOA president told you that you didn't belong in nice spaces because she wanted that seat for herself. And now she's punishing our family because I own the plane she bullied you on. I gripped Emma's shoulders gently. This isn't about you taking too much space. This is about someone who can't stand seeing people like us succeed. People like us? Working class family that built success. Teenager who earned her spot in elite music programs. People who don't automatically defer to authority figures who think they're better than everyone else. I thought about Kathy's words. Vanessa can't stand new money families who think they belong in premium spaces. She saw you in that seat and decided you needed to be taught your place. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm thinking about not going to the elite music program. Maybe I'm not supposed to be in those spaces either. That sentence, my talented daughter considering dropping out of opportunities she'd earned because an HOA president had convinced her she didn't deserve success, made the decision final. Sarah appeared behind us, must have followed when she noticed Emma missing. She's been out here for an hour, Sarah said quietly. Rob, this is clinical regression. Emma's internalizing the message that she doesn't deserve the space she occupies, that taking up room is wrong, that authority figures will punish her for being visible. I know. If we don't stop this now, if Vanessa's campaign continues, Emma will carry this belief into adulthood, that she should make herself smaller, that success makes her a target, that she should apologize for achievements. I looked at my daughter, seeing the confident musician who'd worked so hard to overcome her previous bullying experiences, now questioning whether she deserved any of it. Vanessa had done this in 3 weeks, taken a girl who'd finally learned she belonged and convinced her she should disappear. I stood, pulled out my phone, called Daniel, send everything to the insurance company, full documentation, Kathy's testimony, the timeline connecting every violation to the flight incident, calculate maximum damages for business defamation, harassment, and emotional distress to a minor. You're sure? I'm watching my daughter question whether she deserves to exist visibly in the world because an HOA president is teaching her that authority figures punish people who don't know their place. My voice was cold, controlled fury. Send it all. Let the insurance company decide whether Vanessa Whitfield is worth the liability she's created. I hung up, sat back down beside Emma. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make sure the board chair faces consequences for what she's done to you, to our family, to the other families she's forced out, not through HOA appeals or polite requests, through the one thing people like her understand, economic pressure that makes her too expensive to protect. How? By making the insurance company realize she's operating a personal vendetta that could cost them millions. I pulled Emma close. And you're going to that elite music program. You're going to take up every inch of space you've earned, because the world needs people who refuse to make themselves smaller just because bullies tell them to. Sarah sat on Emma's other side. Your father built an airline from nothing because he understood that everyone deserves dignity and access, regardless of their background. That premium seat represented everything he believes, and Vanessa tried to teach you the opposite, that I don't belong there, that you should apologize for success. I looked at the dock, our sacred space now poisoned by fear of HOA retaliation. But she picked the wrong family to teach that lesson to. Emma was quiet then. What if everyone still hates us? What if the insurance thing doesn't work? Then we fight anyway, because teaching you that standing up matters is more important than being liked by people who'd rather protect a bully than defend what's right. If you've ever watched your child learn to make themselves smaller because an adult convinced them they don't deserve the space they occupy, stay with me. Because what happened next proved that sometimes the best way to protect your daughter is to make the person who hurt her too expensive for anyone to defend. Kathy Morrison returned 4 days later with a briefcase and determination replacing the fear I'd seen before. My daughter told me something last night. She set the briefcase on my dining room table, hands steadier than during her first visit, She said, "Mom, if you don't help Emma's family because you're scared, I'll be disappointed in you." Then she asked how I'd feel if someone bullied her, and adults stayed silent because they were afraid. She opened the briefcase, pulled out organized folders. So here's everything. Every piece of evidence the HOA president thought she'd hidden or controlled. First folder, text messages. Look at this one from the morning after the flight. Vanessa to Kathy. "That man's daughter was disrespectful on my trip. Entitled teenager who doesn't understand her place. Now I discover he owns the airline. We're going to teach this family about community standards." Second folder, email chains from the emergency board meeting. Vanessa's message to all board members. "Emergency meeting today, 6 p.m. The Castellano family needs to understand that respect for authority matters in this community. His daughter's behavior on the flight was unacceptable, and now we discover he's running commercial operations from residential property. Time to enforce standards." She pulled out the proposed commercial activity restrictions. "These were written specifically to target you. Look, no vehicle with company logos exceeding 6 inches visible from street. Your logo is 7 inches. No home office activities visible through windows from public areas. Your office faces the street. No mention of business affiliations in community spaces." She literally wrote rules to prohibit you from existing as a business owner in this neighborhood. Third folder, documentation of previous families Vanessa had forced out. The nurse, "I have the violation notices. 53 citations in 6 months, all issued after she refused to vote for Vanessa's budget proposal. The teacher, 47 violations in 4 months after Vanessa decided her tutoring business attracted the wrong element. The small business owner, 61 citations after he questioned Vanessa's authority at a board meeting." Kathy's voice grew stronger with each revelation. "But here's what matters most." She pulled out her phone, showed me a voice memo. "I recorded the last board meeting when you weren't there. Listen." Vanessa's voice, crystal clear. "The Castellano situation is perfect. His daughter showed complete disrespect on that flight, sitting in premium seating like she belonged there. Now we discover Daddy runs an airline from our neighborhood. This is exactly the kind of new money arrogance we need to eliminate. People who don't understand that certain spaces, whether it's first-class seats or premium communities, aren't for everyone." Another board member, "But he's not actually violating any rules." Vanessa, "Then we'll create rules he's violating. I've already filed county complaints. Zoning will investigate. Meanwhile, we'll isolate the family socially until they understand they're not welcome here." The recording continued for 12 minutes. Vanessa explicitly connecting every violation to the flight incident, describing her strategy to force our family out, using language that made her class-based prejudice undeniable. She said all this with you recording? She doesn't know I started documenting everything 3 months ago when she threatened to cite my catering business as a commercial violation if I didn't vote her way. Kathy pulled out more files. I have recordings, emails, texts, everything showing she's used HOA authority as a weapon against anyone who doesn't defer to her. Why are you giving me this now? Because my daughter asked me what kind of person stays silent while a bully destroys families, and I couldn't answer that question without admitting I'd been complicit. She met my eyes. I'll testify to everything: the flight incident motivation, the targeting pattern, the class-based discrimination, all of it. Just promise me you'll protect my business from retaliation. The insurance company will do that for me. I looked at the evidence, comprehensive documentation of Vanessa's vendetta. Once they see this, the board chair becomes uninsurable. No HOA can function without liability coverage. They'll have to choose between her and their ability to exist as an organization. Kathy stood. There's one more thing. Vanessa told me yesterday she's planning a special assessment, $5,000 per household, to cover increased legal fees from dealing with problem residents. She's going to make every homeowner pay for her campaign against you. That'll backfire spectacularly. I know, because the moment homeowners realize they're funding her personal vendetta, they'll turn on her. She headed for the door, then paused. Mr. Castellano, your daughter deserved that seat. Anyone who tells her otherwise is wrong. After she left, I compiled everything with Daniel's documentation for the insurance company. Voice recordings of Vanessa explicitly connecting violations to the flight. Emails showing premeditated targeting. evidence of a 3-year pattern forcing out successful families, text messages proving witness intimidation and board manipulation. The board chair had built her campaign on authority and fear. She'd forgotten that evidence destroys authority when it proves the authority was always illegitimate. And she definitely didn't know that insurance companies reviewing this kind of systematic harassment documentation don't just drop coverage. They demand immediate removal of the liability source. Vanessa had terrorized families for years. Now, her own evidence was about to end her. Daniel and I spent the next 2 days building a strategy designed to create economic pressure that would make Vanessa's removal inevitable. We're not suing, Daniel explained, spreading documents across my dining room table. We're creating insurance liability so severe that keeping her in power becomes financially impossible for every homeowner. First component, comprehensive claim notification to the HOA's insurance carrier. We document everything, Daniel said, compiling Kathy's recordings, the violation timeline, the explicit statements connecting enforcement to the flight incident. The insurance company needs to see that Vanessa's actions were personal retaliation, not legitimate HOA business. He highlighted the policy exclusions: intentional acts, harassment, actions for personal benefit. Every violation she issued falls outside coverage because she was pursuing a vendetta stemming from a non-HOA incident. The insurance company's exposure is potentially unlimited. Second component, federal regulatory angle. Aviation is federally regulated under FAA jurisdiction, Daniel explained. Vanessa's attempts to prohibit you from mentioning your airline, her interference with your charter operations, her demands that you hide your profession, all potentially violate federal commerce protections. He drafted a complaint to the Department of Transportation. We're not trying to win a DOT case. We're creating federal regulatory scrutiny that makes the insurance company realize this isn't just local HOA drama. It's potential federal litigation. Third component, insurance industry expert consultation. Daniel brought in Margaret Chen, who'd spent 20 years analyzing HOA liability for major carriers. She reviewed our documentation with clinical precision. "This is an insurance company's nightmare," she said flatly. HOA president using authority for personal revenge, business defamation against a federally regulated operation, documented pattern of targeting successful families, emotional harm to a minor. If he sues and wins, damages could easily exceed $2 million, the policy cap. What happens then? Every homeowner becomes personally liable for the excess, their personal assets, their homes, all exposed. She pulled up actuarial tables. But more importantly, the insurance carrier will view this HOA as uninsurable going forward. They'll either drop coverage entirely or raise premiums 400 to 500%. Can homeowners afford that? No, and their mortgages require insurance. No coverage means loan defaults, property value collapse, financial catastrophe for the entire community. Margaret looked at me directly. You don't need to destroy Vanessa through litigation. You need the insurance company to realize she's too expensive to protect. They'll force the HOA to choose, remove her or lose coverage. Fourth component, media strategy targeting aviation industry. I contacted Lisa Martinez, editor of Regional Aviation Today, and David Kim, who ran Aviation Community Service Foundation, an advocacy group for airlines serving underserved markets. HOA president bullies teen on charity flight, then targets father's community service airline, I pitched. Lisa was immediately interested. You provide at-cost charter flights to schools? 43 schools last year. Atlas Airlines' mission is serving communities that can't afford commercial air travel. And the HOA president is targeting your business because your daughter had a premium seat on one of those flights? She's using HOA authority to punish me for owning the plane she bullied my child on. David from ACSF was even more direct. This is exactly the kind of story that resonates with our community. Airlines that serve schools and nonprofits face enough challenges without HOA harassment. We'll amplify this across every aviation advocacy platform. Fifth component, economic analysis for homeowners. Daniel calculated the financial impact of losing insurance coverage or facing premium increases. Average homeowner in Lakeside Manor would face $3,000 to $8,000 annually in increased insurance costs, or loss of coverage entirely, which triggers mortgage default clauses. He prepared a simple breakdown. Keep Vanessa Sarsenda sa Sarsins, lose insurance or pay $5,000 more per year. Remove Vanessa, will insurance coverage continues at current rates. When homeowners see those numbers, the choice becomes obvious. I looked at the comprehensive strategy we'd built: insurance liability documentation, federal regulatory complaints, industry media exposure, economic impact calculations, coalition of previous victims ready to testify, multiple pressure points converging simultaneously. The HOA president had spent 3 weeks building a cage of violations and social isolation. She didn't realize she'd built it around herself. Send everything, I told Daniel. Insurance notification, DOT complaint, media contacts, economic analysis to all homeowners. Let's see what happens when 200 families realize the board chair's personal vendetta is about to cost them thousands of dollars. Vanessa thought she'd weaponized authority. She'd weaponized her own removal, and she'd done it by targeting the one person in Lakeside Manor who understood exactly how insurance companies calculate liability in federally regulated industries. The trap was set. Now we'd see how long it took the insurance company to spring it. The insurance investigation launched within 48 hours of Daniel's notification. A senior claims investigator named Patricia Ross contacted me first. "Mr. Castellano, I've reviewed your documentation. I need to interview you, your HOA board members, and multiple residents regarding the alleged harassment campaign. How long will the investigation take?" Given the severity of the allegations and the potential liability exposure, 72 hours for preliminary findings. She was thorough and clinical, interviewed me for 2 hours about the flight incident, every violation, Emma's psychological regression, the pattern of targeting our family. Then she interviewed Kathy Morrison, who provided the voice recordings of Vanessa explicitly connecting violations to the flight. She interviewed the 3 families Vanessa had previously forced out: the nurse, the teacher, the small business owner. Each described systematic harassment campaigns that had driven them from their homes. She interviewed current board members who nervously confirmed Vanessa's emergency meeting after the flight and her stated intention to teach the Castellano family a lesson. Meanwhile, the aviation industry story broke. Regional Aviation Today ran the headline: "Community Service Airline CEO Targeted by HOA After President Bullied Daughter on Charity Flight." The article detailed Emma's experience, Vanessa's subsequent HOA campaign, and Atlas Airlines' mission serving underserved communities with affordable charter flights. Aviation Community Service Foundation amplified it across their network. "This story represents everything wrong with HOA overreach," David Kim's statement read. "An airline owner providing charity flights to schools is being harassed by an HOA president who resented his teenage daughter occupying a premium seat." Local news picked it up within hours. HOA president under investigation for targeting business owner after in-flight dispute. The story included Emma's humiliation, Vanessa's violation campaign, and the insurance company's active investigation. I also executed the final component, reaching out to Vanessa's previous victims and coordinating testimony. The nurse, she issued 53 violations in 6 months because I worked night shifts and had colleagues carpool from my house. She told me I was attracting the wrong element to the community. The teacher, 47 citations for tutoring students at home. She said educational businesses lowered property values. Really, she just didn't like that I disagreed with her at a board meeting. The small business owner, 61 violations after I questioned her budget proposal. She told me people who worked with their hands didn't belong in premium communities. Each victim was willing to provide sworn statements about Vanessa's pattern of using HOA authority to eliminate residents she deemed beneath community standards. Patricia Ross's preliminary report arrived on day 3. Daniel called me immediately after receiving it. "Rob, this is devastating for Vanessa. The investigator found clear evidence of personal retaliation, systematic harassment, and use of HOA authority for non-HOA purposes. What's the insurance company's position? They're preparing formal notification to the board. But based on Patricia's findings, Vanessa's actions fall outside policy coverage due to intentional misconduct exclusions. Any litigation you file won't be covered." Meaning? Meaning, if you sue for business defamation, harassment, and emotional distress to a minor, and you'd likely win based on this evidence, the HOA's insurance won't pay. Individual homeowners become personally liable for damages. How much exposure? Patricia calculated potential damages at $3 to $5 million. Policy cap is $2 million. That leaves $1 to $3 million in personal liability distributed among homeowners. I felt the trap closing around Vanessa. What happens next? The insurance carrier sends formal notification to all board members and homeowners. They'll state that continued coverage requires immediate removal of the liability source, Vanessa, and implementation of anti-harassment policies. If the HOA refuses, coverage terminates in 30 days. And if coverage terminates, every homeowner's mortgage requires insurance. No coverage means loan default triggers, property values collapse, financial catastrophe for the entire community. That afternoon, the aviation industry response intensified. Airlines that served schools and nonprofits issued statements supporting Atlas Regional. Aviation advocacy groups called for HOA reform legislation. Regional media covered it as a David versus Goliath story. Small community service airline versus vindictive HOA president. National outlets picked up the angle. Teen bullied for premium seat. Father's business targeted by HOA president. The narrative was perfect. Entitled Authority Figure Trying to Teach Working Class Family Their Place. After the daughter occupied space, the authority figure felt she didn't deserve. Every story mentioned the insurance investigation and potential financial impact on homeowners. My phone started ringing that evening. Neighbors who'd avoided us for weeks now panicking. Is it true the insurance company might drop our coverage? Are we really facing personal liability if you sue? How much could this cost us? I stayed calm, factual. The insurance investigation found that the HOA president's actions were personal retaliation outside policy coverage. If coverage is dropped or you face premium increases, that's a consequence of her using authority for a personal vendetta. What do we do? That's between you and your board. But insurance companies don't protect HOA presidents who operate vendettas. They protect themselves from liability. By midnight, I'd received calls from 47 homeowners, all asking the same question. How do we remove Vanessa before she destroys our insurance and our property values? The board chair had spent a month tightening a financial noose around my family. She just discovered she'd been tying it around her own career. The insurance company's formal letter arrived by certified mail to every household in Lakeside Manor 3 days later. I received my copy at 8 a.m. By 9, my phone was ringing off the hook. The letter was devastating in its clinical precision. Notice of liability exposure and coverage modification. Based on comprehensive investigation into actions by HOA President Vanessa Whitfield, we have determined that her conduct creates liability exposure significantly exceeding policy limits and falls outside coverage parameters. Findings. Ms. Whitfield used HOA authority to pursue personal retaliation stemming from a non-HOA incident, airline seating dispute. Systematic harassment campaign against residents' federally regulated business pattern of targeting successful professionals through fabricated violations, documented intentional misconduct excluding policy coverage, potential damages exposure, $3.5 million. Policy limit, $2 million. Required actions. Effective immediately. Continued coverage requires immediate removal of Vanessa Whitfield from all HOA positions. Implementation of anti-harassment and anti-retaliation policies. Independent review of all violations issued in past 24 months. Mandatory board member liability training. Consequences of non-compliance. If Ms. Whitfield remains in leadership, current policy terminates in 30 days. No coverage available for any claims related to her actions. Individual homeowners face personal liability for excess damages. New coverage, if available, requires 500% premium increase. Estimated annual cost increase per household, $3,000, $8,000. Mortgage. Implications. Loss of insurance coverage triggers default clauses in most mortgage agreements, potentially requiring immediate loan repayment or foreclosure proceedings. Your board has 10 days to respond with corrective action plan. The letter included Patricia Ross's investigation summary, every violation traced back to the flight incident, Kathy's voice recordings, testimony from previous victims, documentation of Vanessa's explicit statements about teaching lessons to families who didn't know their place. My phone exploded. Mrs. Henderson, who'd stopped waving at us, Mr. Castellano, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. We didn't realize she was doing this because of something personal. $8,000 more per year? We can't afford that. Mr. Peterson, who'd been cold at the pool. Is there any way to fix this without removing Vanessa? She's been president for 3 years. The insurance company was very clear, I said calmly. She created liability they won't cover. Your choice is remove her or lose coverage. But can't you just not sue? The insurance company doesn't care whether I sue. They care that her documented harassment campaign creates exposure they're unwilling to insure. Whether I take legal action or not, you're facing coverage loss or massive premium increases as long as she's in power. The Johnsons, whose daughter had uninvited Emma from the pool party. We didn't know it was this serious. Sarah, we're so sorry about Madison's party. Vanessa said your family was causing problems, and we believed her. By noon, Daniel called. The HOA's attorney just contacted me. Emergency board meeting tonight. They want to discuss resolution options. Translation: they want me to agree not to sue in exchange for removing Vanessa. Exactly. What do you want to tell them? I thought about Emma at the dock, questioning whether she deserved the space she occupied. About Vanessa's voice. Your family will learn respect for authority. About 3 families forced from their homes before us. Tell them I'm not interested in agreements or negotiations. The insurance company has given them their options. They can remove Vanessa and keep coverage, or keep Vanessa and lose everything. That's between them and their carrier. You're not going to make this easier for them? Why should I? They made Emma's life hell for 3 weeks because they were too afraid to question their HOA president. They ostracized my family, excluded my daughter, believed every rumor Vanessa spread. Now they want me to solve their insurance crisis? Fair point. Tell their attorney I'll attend tonight's emergency meeting as a resident. But I'm not negotiating anything. The board chair created this mess. The community can clean it up. That evening, I drove to the community center for what I knew would be the final confrontation. Sarah and Emma stayed home. I didn't want Emma exposed to more community drama, but as I walked toward the building, I saw something unexpected. The parking lot was completely full, every household represented, and standing outside, looking pale and cornered, was Vanessa Whitfield. The HOA president, who'd spent a month destroying my family, had just realized her authority was about to cost every neighbor thousands of dollars. And they were gathering to decide whether she was worth it. The community center was packed beyond capacity. 185 households crammed into a space designed for half that many. Insurance company representatives sat in the front row, stone-faced and official. Vanessa attempted to call the meeting to order, but the room erupted before she could finish her opening statement. How much is this going to cost us? Someone shouted. $8,000 a year in insurance increases because you had a fight with someone on an airplane? Another voice called out. The HOA president tried to regain control. This meeting is about addressing false allegations. The insurance company investigated for 3 days. Mr. Peterson stood, waving his copy of the letter. They found documentation that you started this entire campaign because Mr. Castellano's daughter didn't give up her seat on a flight. That's not false allegations. That's their professional findings. I stood, keeping my voice calm and factual. 3 weeks ago, the board chair ordered my 14-year-old daughter to surrender her premium seat on a charter flight my company provided at cost to her school. When Emma complied, because she's been taught to respect adults, Vanessa made loud comments about entitled children and knowing your place. I pulled up the timeline on my phone, displayed it on the projector screen. October 15th, flight incident. October 16th, 8 a.m. I received first HOA violation, 24 hours later, for a vehicle that's been parked in my driveway for 3 years without issue. The room went quiet. October 16th, 25th, 5 additional violations, all targeting my aviation business. October 20th, Vanessa files county complaints claiming illegal commercial operations. October 22nd, my daughter is excluded from social events because the HOA president spread rumors our family is under investigation. I played Kathy's voice recording. Vanessa's voice filled the room. The Castellano situation is perfect. His daughter showed complete disrespect on that flight, sitting in premium seating like she belonged there. This is exactly the kind of new money arrogance we need to eliminate. People who don't understand that certain spaces, whether it's first-class seats or premium communities, aren't for everyone. The room exploded. You targeted them because of a seat on a plane? You're costing us $8,000 a year because you didn't like where his daughter was sitting? Kathy Morrison stood, her voice steady despite visible nervousness. I'm HOA secretary. I was at the emergency board meeting Vanessa called the morning after that flight. She explicitly stated she was going to teach the Castellano family a lesson about respect for authority. She connected every violation to the flight incident. I have recordings, emails, and text messages documenting everything. Then the three families Vanessa had previously forced out spoke. The nurse. She issued 53 violations in 6 months because I worked night shifts. She told me families like mine lowered community standards. I sold my house and left because I couldn't afford the constant fines. The teacher. 47 citations for tutoring students at home. She said I was attracting the wrong element. Really, she didn't like that I questioned her budget proposal at a meeting. The small business owner. 61 violations after I disagreed with her authority. She told me people who worked with their hands didn't belong here. I lost my home because of her harassment. The room turned hostile toward Vanessa. Patricia Ross, the insurance investigator, stood. Based on our findings, Ms. Whitfield's actions constitute intentional harassment outside policy coverage. Her documented pattern of targeting successful professionals, her explicit statements connecting enforcement to personal grievances, and her use of HOA authority for class-based discrimination create unlimited liability exposure. She looked directly at the homeowners. You have 3 options. Remove Ms. Whitfield immediately and implement anti-harassment policies. Coverage continues at current rates. Keep Ms. Whitfield in leadership. Coverage terminates in 30 days, and new policies require 400% premium increases, or lose insurance entirely and face mortgage default clauses. How much time do we have? Someone asked. The board must vote tonight. Our coverage decision is contingent on your action. The vote was called within minutes. Immediate removal of Vanessa Whitfield from all HOA positions. 178 votes in favor, 7 against. Vanessa stood, face red with humiliation and fury. You're all making a mistake. This man is manipulating you. You cost us our insurance because you bullied a teenager on a plane, Mrs. Henderson said coldly. Leave, now. The board chair, stripped of authority, facing potential personal legal action, her reputation destroyed, gathered her things and walked out of the community center to absolute silence. No one defended her. No one thanked her for 3 years of service. They'd calculated the cost of protecting her versus the cost of removing her, and she'd lost. 3 months later, I sat with Emma at the community dock, our sacred father-daughter space that Vanessa's campaign had poisoned, but we were finally reclaiming. Emma had her French horn case beside her. She'd just come from her first rehearsal at the elite music program. How was it? I asked. Intimidating. Amazing. I played a solo piece and the director said I belonged there. She smiled. The first genuine, unguarded smile I'd seen in months. I actually believed him, Dad. I didn't question whether I deserved to be in that room. New HOA leadership had transformed Lakeside Manor completely. Kathy Morrison was now treasurer, having found courage through crisis and become an advocate for transparency and accountability. The new board had rescinded every violation Vanessa issued against our family, refunded all fines, and implemented comprehensive anti-harassment policies. No resident could be targeted for their legal profession. Home offices were explicitly protected. Success was celebrated, not punished. The 3 families Vanessa had forced out received settlements and formal apologies. 2 chose to return to the community. The aviation industry story had created unexpected benefits for Atlas Airlines. Dozens of schools and nonprofits reached out requesting at-cost charter services. The publicity around our community service mission brought new partnerships, new opportunities. Ironically, Vanessa's attempt to destroy my business had expanded it significantly. The insurance company's intervention had created industry-wide ripple effects too. HOA insurance carriers across the region began scrutinizing board member actions more carefully, implementing mandatory anti-harassment training and writing policy exclusions for personal vendetta campaigns. Vanessa's case became a cautionary tale in insurance industry publications. When HOA authority becomes personal liability, Emma looked out at the water, thoughtful. I used to think that woman was right, that I should have known that seat wasn't for me, that I took up too much space. And now? Now I think she was small, and she tried to make me small too, because seeing me in that seat reminded her of something she couldn't stand, that people like us belong in premium spaces when we earn them. I pulled my daughter close. You know what I learned through all this? That the best response to people who tell you to make yourself smaller isn't to shrink. It's to take up even more space, with pride, with confidence, with the knowledge that you earned every inch of it. Emma nodded. The music director told me today that talented musicians who've overcome adversity often play with more depth. He said my experiences made my music more powerful. He's right. So Vanessa actually made me stronger? No, you made yourself stronger by refusing to believe her message. Vanessa just provided the obstacle you overcame. The dock was ours again. The community was ours again. And Emma was finally, completely herself again, confident, taking up space without apology, understanding that authority figures who abuse power eventually face people who know how to dismantle that power. Vanessa had tried to teach Emma she didn't belong in premium spaces, in seats, in communities, in success. Instead, Emma learned that bullies lose when their victims refuse to shrink, when insurance companies calculate the cost of protecting them, and when communities finally choose financial self-interest over fear. The former HOA president had moved out of Lakeside Manor within weeks of her removal. Facing potential civil litigation from multiple families, stripped of authority, her reputation destroyed by her own documented harassment campaign, she'd spent 3 years terrorizing families she deemed beneath community standards. She'd ended her tenure being unanimously voted out by the same community that had once feared her, not because they suddenly developed moral courage, but because she'd become too expensive to protect. Economic pressure had accomplished what appeals to fairness never could. I looked at Emma, watching her stare at the sunset without fear or self-doubt, and thought about the promise I'd made at this dock months ago, that she deserved the space she occupied, that standing up to bullies mattered, that taking up room with pride was her right. Vanessa had tried to break that promise. Instead, she'd proven it true. Because when you target the wrong family's child, when you use authority to teach teenagers they should apologize for success, you eventually face someone who understands that authority built on intimidation collapses under economic liability. The insurance company hadn't cared about fairness or justice. They'd cared about exposure, damages, and the cost of ensuring an HOA president operating a personal vendetta. And when that cost exceeded the benefit of protecting her, they'd force the community's hand. Vanessa's removal wasn't moral victory. It was financial necessity. But Emma's healing, her reclaimed confidence, her understanding that she belongs in every space she earns, that was everything. Dad? Emma looked at me. Thank you for not giving up when everyone thought we should just move. You're worth fighting for, sweetheart. Always. She smiled. I know. And now I actually believe it. If you want more stories about standing up to people who abuse authority and try to teach others they don't belong in the spaces they've earned, hit subscribe right now. Share your own story in the comments about refusing to make yourself smaller, and let me know where you're watching from. Because sometimes the greatest victories come from understanding that bullies who use authority as a weapon eventually face someone who knows how to weaponize liability right back. Vanessa told my daughter she didn't belong. The insurance company told Vanessa she was too expensive to keep. And Emma learned the most important lesson, that earned success is worth defending, that taking up space isn't something to apologize for, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to disappear. The dock was ours. The community was transformed, and my daughter was whole again.